we probably don't use the word ecosystem on a daily basis, okay? So it might sound a little foreign to you. So to make it real, I'll give you a story. I grew up in Bridgeport, Connecticut. I still live in Connecticut, live in Naugatuck. I grew up in a one-family, three-story house. See, when I tell this story like in the South or the West, people go, what are you talking about? You know what I'm talking about. They were all Robertos in that house. Grandma and Grandpa lived on the third floor, from which there they could watch everybody. I lived in a neighborhood. Remember neighborhoods? Neighborhoods were places in the summertime when you were playing softball and you broke a window, the word got home before you did, and somebody was home and she was not happy. So, to be sure, home, neighborhood, Italian parish, Holy Rosary, east side of Bridgeport, Connecticut. There were probably only 6 last names in the whole parish. Now, you could take Italian out and put Polish, Irish, whatever the ethnicity, this all fits. Okay. The Italian Monsignor, the center of really life, not just church life, everything went through him. Before he died, if he had written a book, he could have made millions on the stories he knew and what people did and didn't do. Church, home, neighborhood, ethnicity. For about 100 years in the United States, give or take a few decades, ethnicity carried the Catholic faith. Because grandmas and grandpas, my grandmas and grandpas, came over in the late 1800s, and they brought with them the old country. In fact, they built churches that looked just like the churches from the old country. They built the Italian club, and they built the fountain in the center of the complex that looked just like the fountain and the square in Pundlandolfo, Italy, way up in the hills between Naples and Rome. In fact, when people would come over, they'd say, that's a better fountain than we've got back home. And ethnicity passed on faith. So my Italian Monsignor really never had to worry about religious transmission. As long as he had grandparents and grandparents who spoke Italian first and English second, who replicated the old world and the new world, as long as he had traditions that they practiced at home, everything worked. He never had to build community. Community walked in the door on Sunday morning, and community left the door on Sunday morning. Community came to ethnic festivals, bingo on Friday, and community went home. That was an ecosystem, tightly knit. There was very little chance you'd be anything but Italian and Catholic and Italian. And I was a public school kid, so I had to go to CCD class. Now, that same Italian Monsignor was also very frugal. So after the last Mass on Sunday, he turned the heat off. He had the shortest daily Mass on record. I think it was like 12 and a half minutes, because at 13 minutes, you started getting frostbite, all right? So we met release time. Now, for the young ones here, you have no context. That's all right. It's just a history lesson. Stay tuned. We'll get back to the digital world. So I used to leave school about an hour early, Monday afternoon, take the bus across town to my Italian church, into the pews of the church for a non-graded religious education class. It was, I think we're all 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And it was the Baltimore Catechism. And they would do, the sisters would come over. They would fly over because they were an order that had the wings. They'd fly over from across the school, and they would teach us. And the methodology was pretty simple. They'd ask a question, and if we didn't respond with enough conviction or sound volume, they'd do it again and again. And so we got through the whole Baltimore Catechism in a year. Okay? And this is where you never took your coat off. So I always said we were ready to leave, And then I went back for 7th grade. Now, I already had been confirmed and all the rest, because that all happened in 5th grade. So I went back in 7th grade, and guess what they did? They started with question 1. I knew question 1. I knew the answer to question 1. Who made you? God made me. I knew question 2. Why did God make you? To love, sir? I knew those. And I only knew one other question. The only one that anybody still remembers is, what is a sacrament, right? After that, you don't remember anything else about the Baltimore Catechism. So for the next 2 years, my religious education happened at the Jane Street Public Library, which was halfway. I can get off the bus, do homework, read books, and the rest. Well, once you've done the course and you've memorized it, what else is there to do? Because the catechism was never the thing that actually passed on faith. I had grandmothers and grandpas. My grandmother in Waterbury, Connecticut was crippled, so she never really left. In all the years I knew her, she never left her home. So instead of going to church, she turned her home into a church. So in every room you walked into, there was it was almost always, a picture or a statue of Mary or some saint in Italy who probably really wasn't. There's a lot of saints in Italy that really you can't find any. Okay, I got me. All right. And then she had her prayer space, votive candle, her prayer book, crucifix. So when you walked into Nanny's house, you walked into her church. And it rubbed off on you. Years later, I heard Monica Helwig, the great Catholic theologian, talk at a conference. She said, when she was growing up, the walls of her house were Catholic. And you know what I saw? Nanny's house. If the walls of your house are Catholic, religious transmission is happening because you simply are breathing Catholic air. That's an ecosystem. And when it works, it really works. And it did for the better part of 100 years in the United States. And then slowly but surely over the last 30 years, it's been in a steady decline. With really very little response from the church to that decline. Our models haven't changed. Our way we think about church hasn't changed, even while this is going on. So it's not unusual to say, basically what we have for children at church is an hour a week. Because that's all that was left from the old ecosystem. It's got better resources and new faces and all that. Yeah. But basically, it's all that's left of the old ecosystem. So the challenge for all of us is, how do you build a new one in 2015? Because you can't go back to my grandma's and grandpa's ecosystem. That world's gone forever. It was a moment in Catholic history in the United States that cannot be repeated. It can't be replicated. So you can't change things by fighting existing reality, Buckminster Fuller said. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. Well, the model is almost obsolete just because it declined. Let's build a new one. Let me skip ahead to this. Here's what I'm suggesting for your consideration. The old system, the old ecosystem, if you will, was church, family, intergenerational. Catholic school, where there was a Catholic school, not for me personally. Ethnicity and neighborhood. We need to build a new one. And what I would suggest the new one is a strong emphasis on intergenerationality. Why? That's what we've lost. We got it for free for 100 years. And now we have to build it. Age group and generational faith formation, no surprise. Family faith formation. If we're not about working in all the diversity of families, in nurturing family faith practice at home, and building up the confidence and the competence of parents, none of the other things in the system are going to work. Certainly not work effectively. Missional faith formation. We need an ecosystem and all kinds of activity that goes out to where people are. Luckily, we just happen to be in an era where you can actually go out to people because they're all reachable. We can connect with all of them. We can build relationships with all of them. They haven't gone anywhere. They're still out there. Go to Mass on Saturday. Just do a survey of where people are on Sunday morning. I did this as part of a project I did with a group of parishes. And one woman said, I went to Starbucks, and I sat there from 6 a.m. to noon. She said, and she had taken notes, taken photographs. She just sat there. Now, that's almost heaven. If you put a bookstore and a wine bar with it, that's the kingdom. She said, let me tell you what I learned. And she had like 10 things that she learned about what people do on Sunday morning and not at church. Missional, how we out where people are, build relations with people, because in many ways, if we want to grow our community, our church, we're going to have to be missional about faith formation. Plant it in the places where people actually are, not where we want them to be. Don't close the church, but just think about your church as a bigger campus, like the whole community. It's just another way of saying neighborhood, but in 2015 language. And then lastly, this is what's brand spanking new. So if intergenerational was, yeah, I got that. Age group, yeah, got that, but not the way I'm going to describe it today. Family, yeah, got that. Missional, don't have that. The digital makes this work. Without the digital, well, it's like doing faith formation before books. None of us remember that era. Thank God. But because we're 500 years into the Gutenberg era, we just take books as a technology for granted. The internet, it's a technology, and all the tools and technologies that came off of that. The question is, how do you repurpose and use that for faith formation? While it's true the Bible was one of the first books printed on the Gutenberg printing press because Martin Luther paid him a fortune to do the Bible. Oh, okay. That's kind of an insider. That's not the only thing printed on a printing press in those days, but it was the growth of literacy in Europe. Novels. So what needs to be true about this ecosystem? I'm going to highlight these kind of briefly because then we're going to go more in depth. We're going to have to emphasize, I think, in the new ecosystem, intergenerationality as just part of the fabric of what we do. Whether it's intergenerational learning or worship, whatever it might be. We have to rebuild the fabric of multiple generations in relationship and connection with each other because we spent the last 40 years separating them. Even though church is one place where 4 or 5 generations come together to do intentional things like Sunday worship, we tend to segregate, not integrate. So it has to be, and I think intergenerational has to be the center of our faith formation network. Has to be the center of what we do. It drives it. I love this quote from Joyce Mercer, and I think this points to the transmission piece and the community piece. She writes this: we invite people into the way of life that embodies God's love, justice, compassion, and reconciliation by being, doing, and thinking about it together. The best curriculum for forming children, youth, and anyone else in Christian faith is guided participation in a community of practice where people are vibrantly, passionately risking themselves together in lives of faith in a world crying out for the love of Christ. Guided participation in a community of practice puts a premium on both participation and practice. We become Christian, taking on the identity of one who is a disciple of Jesus by acting the way Christians act and by talking the way Christians talk. And over time, through practice, even our hearts and minds are formed in this way of life. That's the best view of the importance of intergenerationality in the life of the church. We have to make that central. And luckily, especially in a liturgical church like the Roman Catholic Church, we've got all kinds of opportunities to make that happen. All kinds of opportunities. They're just sitting there saying, use me, use me. Caring, our community life, our celebrational life, Sunday worship, milestones, sacraments. Our learning life can be more intergenerational, praying and serving. We can view our lives through the lens of intergenerationality and start to think about how do we play to one of our strengths as church is to rebuild the intergenerational fabric of community. People need to know each other, share with each other, learn with each other, celebrate with each other. Way back when, back in the 1970s, Merton Strawman, great researcher, wrote a wonderful book called 5 Cries of Youth. Some of you might remember. If not, I'll remember for you. And in that book, he had 5 cries, but the 5th cry was the cry of the joyous. These were the actively engaged teenagers. And to a person, when he interviewed them and surveyed them, they all said one of the most significant things in their life was this. They were known by name by at least 5 adults in their church. Age group. The age group piece is fine, except that we just stopped a little bit short of adulthood. So we have 60 more years to add on, okay? So we're thinking about age group, addressing unique tasks. All of that revolves around the intergenerational community. Intergenerational, we're together. Age group, faith mission, we can specialize. So it's a both and, not an either or. But the key is we've got to move from here through the rest of the life cycle. In our current models, you don't have enough staff and money and facilities and days of the week to pull it off. You just don't. But the digital piece is the accelerator. Changing the model is the accelerator to doing that. Family faith formation. If you do, out of this model, this is a linchpin. So, nurturing family faith at home through these 8 faith-forming processes. And I'll go back to a slide that I went over before. And that's this. I've had a chance to do a lot of research, kind of studies of studies for a bigger project on what are the things that make a difference in faith in people's lives. What puts people on a trajectory towards lifelong faith growth? And these 8 come up over and over again in research studies. Bengston's research, National Study on Youth and Religion, dozens of studies. These 8, the reason why I'm going to point them out here is, think about these 8 as the curriculum for the home. How do we build caring relationships? Now, this is also the curriculum for the church, by the way. Because if you think about your church community, its life and its events, they all are in here somewhere. Rituals and milestones, church or home. How we celebrate our growth, the events of our family, big ones, birth, baptisms, and little ones. Success at school, graduations. Church year feasts and seasons is a natural, it forms a pattern. The dilemma with church year feasts and seasons is not what we do at church, which we do fairly well. It's the fact that there's no counterpart at home to church year feasts and seasons. So people flock to your church for ashes. And they're going to flock back at Easter. And they're going to miss the 40 days of Lent in between. Learning tradition. Everybody who's been in education for more than 22 minutes realizes this. Unless people are learning at home, whatever you do in class has no context. My youngest daughter, is a kindergarten teacher. I call it kind of spring training. She kind of breaks them in. But remember in the old days when kindergarten used to be, play nice, nap nice, eat nice. Now you have to be reading, doing algebra, and all that stuff by first grade. It's kind of like standards. And so a big part of what she does is help parents tell stories to their kids. Help parents and she points to stuff on the internet, that kind of stuff, like the Khan Academy. We'll talk about that later. But just things that have to reinforce, she says, I don't have enough time to move them from 0 to reading, basic math, basic social skills, basic geography without the parents. She's got 7 hours a day, 40 weeks a year. You got 30 hours a year on a good year without snow. Praying and spiritual formation, huge. Prayer in terms of when they looked at highly religious young adults and said, what was a big factor? We prayed at home through my childhood and teenage years. Huge. Prayer, devotions. Second big one, huge, reading the Bible. Yeah, even Catholics, that was true for. Reading the Bible. Is the Bible woven into daily life? Serving, huge. Worshiping on Sunday with everybody. The more we do of those 8, engage people at church, but engage families at home, the more we do of those things, the more we put people on a trajectory towards lifelong faith growth. So the key when we're thinking about family is, how do we help families do those things at home? What used to be taken for granted, woven into the fabric of daily life, now has to be rewoven. We've got to help them do that. Without that, no matter how good what we do at church, there's no system to support what we do at church. Oh, I had it there. I could have gone that way. Parent faith formation. If you do those 8 things, you're doing parent faith formation. Like trying to get parents out for a workshop, unless you're giving out iPads, they don't come. I mean, they just, right? They just, most people say, oh, I just gave up. Well, this is 2015. Don't give up. Reverse the formula. Tell them to stay home and bring the program to them. You've heard of online learning, haven't you? The more we can help them do these things, meaning the more their experience at church can bring them forward to do those things at home, the more the parents are growing in those areas, the more they feel competent and capable, the religious transmission is starting to happen. There's just nothing more important in this whole model. Parenting for faith growth, how to actually do that, parent education, and then we have to help build strong families. Strong families are families in which spirituality can grow. And so the Search Institute's done us a huge favor. They've identified through research these 5 big clusters of what they call family assets. For me, it's the structure of a family curriculum. How do I teach families these family life skills, assets? Relationships, routines, expectations, manage the challenges that come with daily living, and how to connect to a wider community. So we've got all the building blocks to make this happen. We just have to make it happen. Missional. Expand and extend our presence through outreach, connection, relationship building. Just a bigger campus. Take the walls down and just see a bigger campus available. So how churches move worship and faith formation just out there. Opening programs. How many people do Vacation Bible School? And you're the cheapest babysitting for a week, aren't you, in town? So here comes everybody, right? All right. So when you think of Vacation Bible School is a missional activity if you see it, which is what? You've got all 4 of those profiles I talked about in terms of religious diversity. You've got actively engaged parents, and you've got some parents who have not set foot in a church in 100 years, but think this might be good for their kids, and you're cheap. So you have 5 days with all that diversity. And you just hope you can make it to Friday afternoon so you can go on vacation the week after. Like, God gave you all that diversity. They're right in your front door. You had them for 5 days. And you thought it was about children. But it was about the family. That might have been the starting point for a family, instigated by their 3rd grader who said, we learned this Bible story today. What's the Bible? Like, when you do the Exodus story and the kids go, That ought to be a clue. They're not getting the stories anywhere. So even families who are not spiritually engaged, unaffiliated, can become storytellers. You have 5 days of relationship. If you saw that as a missional activity, not as a catechetical program, think of what you could do with the families, with the grandparents in those 5 days. The kids are going to have a great time no matter what you do, because you're putting out water and coloring things and messy stuff and, and lunch and snacks, and they'll be fine. Throw some Legos out there. They're good for the day. It's the parents and grandparents and the whole family. What if that 5 days was the catalyst for something to happen? You've got those opportunities all year long. Instead of complaining about all the parents who just dropped out of the ozone layer for First Communion, see First Communion preparation as a missional activity. See, we're lucky as Catholics. We've got all these things. If you were a Baptist, you don't have any sacraments to work with. At least we got sacraments. Stop moaning. You could be a Baptist. Okay, so you see kind of the different things. I love the example. I was at a church a couple of summers back, and out in their parking lot was a huge screen. Big old screen, and they had a lot of grass and the rest. And every week they do a film fest. They do a film festival for the summer, and every week they do a big film on a big screen. They have hundreds of people who come. They have popcorn and hot dogs and the rest. And kids bring their parents because third graders can't drive yet, which is a good thing, by the way. And they have a missional activity. They pick great films. They engage the whole community. And the church has a bigger footprint. And people build a relationship and say, this is not the church I grew up with or the church I left. You say, no, it's not. Missional. This is a great missional activity. I can't guarantee you won't bang your fingers and be sore at the end of the week. But one of the great missional activities, especially with the 40 and under crowd, is for the church to be at the forefront of justice and service efforts. Building a house together is a great missional activity. Second part of missional is a pathway. And that pathway, we've had the RCIA for years. And the fact that the RCIA numbers nationally continue to decline is another canary in the coal shaft. We have so many canaries in the coal shaft that I'm surprised we, are not paying attention. Less people in the catechumenate today than there were 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. That's the wrong direction. So we need pathways. And so, I don't know, how many are familiar with the Alpha course as an example? Alpha came out of England, came to the U.S., and there's Alpha Catholic. Alpha, I think it's called Alpha Catholic, or Catholic Alpha, I don't know what. But it's basically a 10-week meeting Jesus and Christianity again for the first time. For lots of people who just have it's kind of the reintroduction to it. But that's done everywhere around the country. And you can go right online to Alpha USA and the Catholic Alpha. Here's a parish that Our Lady of Soledad in California. They went down to Saddleback where Rick Warren is. I want to see how they turn people who were just visiting into members. Because that was the big problem. Saddleback is like 60,000 people, but many are just at like a sports arena. They're just visiting. They're not members. So they solved it through a whole membership process. Same thing's going on here. They developed over the course of a year what they call these mini retreats. Everybody's welcome. And it was a pathway from, golly, I just haven't been active. I maybe want to think of it again. Or I just gave up on this Christianity, Catholicism thing as a way to reintroduce people to meet Catholicism again for the first time. We'll talk a lot about these. There's lots of examples. And then lastly, the other part of the ecosystem. So more intergenerational as church playing to our strength, family faith formation, age group that connects and is lifelong, missional outreach to broaden our campus and our reach, build relationships. And then I think it's all accelerated by the online and digital faith formation. The ability to use these technologies and use them really, really well. So utilize the technology to engage people with faith-forming content anytime, anywhere. The dilemma in religious transmission is a really simple one. You don't have enough time with people. You just don't. For the person, think about it number-wise. Even for those who are the most actively engaged in the most active parishes in the galaxy, I'm going to give you 3 hours a week of engagement at church. I'll give you 3 hours. I mean, I'm being very generous. And I'll give you 50 weeks of the year, 2 for vacation. That's 150 hours. 150. The Kaiser Research Group in California researched the amount of contact 8 to 18-year-olds had with media on a given day. It was 7 hours, but they stuffed 10 hours of media viewing in the 7 hours by multitasking. So let's just use 7. I'll be modest. How many days does it take to get to 150? Not many. In fact, in a month, you get to 210. Guess what happened? In 1 month, more media usage than a year at church. And I gave you 3 hours a week. Now I have a way you could reach people 24/7, 365. Any place, just in time. You can extend and expand faith formation. This is not, the thing about the ecosystem is not either or. It's both and. It's all 5. What it made it work when I was growing up is they all work together. Pull one piece out, the system would fall apart eventually. So these 5 have to all work together. So it's not digital or face-to-face, both. It's not family or church, both. It's not age group or intergenerate, both. It's all of it. For an ecosystem to work, all the parts have to work together. So expand faith formation in physical face-to-face into people's daily lives through digital content and mobile delivery systems. Here's the good news. People already have the technology. What they don't have is the software. They don't have the apps. So we're going to look at this afternoon some examples of this, but there's 5 different ways you can integrate this, at least these 5, but I'll just use these. I'll start on the right. Every single Gather program we do can use digital content in that program. All you need is a Wi-Fi connection. Or heck, you can go to YouTube and download the video from YouTube and be current. So every program can benefit from what's on the internet. Every single program. I mean, if every one of your catechists who are working right now in the old classroom model with that big fat textbook that the kids never touch had Wi-Fi access with specially selected material that you curated for them, what would happen to that class? That one simple innovation of that's just adding content into my teaching. I haven't even gotten interactive yet. That's coming. Gather program with online components that go beyond the program. What's the best thing about Sunday Mass? It's an hour. What's the worst thing about Sunday Mass? It's an hour. So how do you send Sunday Mass home with people through the week? Today you can. It doesn't ever have to end. What's the worst thing about Sunday school and 1-hour classes? They're just an hour. But it doesn't have to be anymore. Because everything we do in a physical space can be extended digital. They came to Ash Wednesday and they came back to Easter. And the question is, how did you resource them for the 40 days in between? You can do that today. You can have a 40-day curriculum. In the middle, you're probably familiar with the concept of flipped classroom. Any of your kids or grandkids in schools in which they flip the classroom? So flipped classroom is the concept is just this simple. The content you used to teach is now online. So if you've never been to the Khan Academy, K-H-N, yeah, Khan Academy, tonight visit it and see the 4,000 to 5,000 courses that they put up there that one man started all by himself creating little YouTube videos for his cousins, Salman Khan. That's how they got the Khan Academy. So they flipped the classroom by having the content used to teach available in video and self-paced lessons. And the classroom then is transformed into a laboratory. Practice it, apply it, experience it, perform it, learn it. And it's changing classrooms all across the United States. Enabled by what? Great content on a digital platform. Hint, hint. Now, this is mostly online with regular interaction. So the content's online. So everyone's always worried about, how do I do adult faith formation? People don't come to the rest. Breathe. Relax. Put the stuff online. You know how many online courses in Bible and in Catholic theology and Bible are available? I haven't even gone to YouTube, God forbid, but I haven't even gone to YouTube to start looking there. Just courses from great providers of content. Lots of teachers in Catholic schools are doing their certifications for religion and the rest, all online, with maybe a small group that meets every now and then. Or, in the last example, that doesn't meet at all. Because the resources and the providers and the platforms are already built for us. So now you went from, I've got one way to do things at church in the old model, gather, if I can't gather them, I can't do it, they won't come, so I'm not doing it, to choose your strategy. And by and large, the nice thing is people already have the technologies. Don't buy anything. Don't buy anything. There was a wonderful article this morning in Technology Trends that I get the newsletter. And they estimate that half of all the school children in the United States, half will have tablets by the end of 2016. Half. Half. The other half will bring their own devices to school. And people do want to learn. They absolutely want to learn. And they're concerned about meaning and purpose in life, concerned about making a difference in their lives, making a contribution. They're concerned about all those issues. Serving people, they're concerned about all those things. We've developed an attitude because they don't come to our stuff, we take it personally. And so people don't want to learn. Well, maybe they don't want to learn what you're teaching them. And maybe you just got to let that go. Heck, third graders don't want to learn what you're teaching them, so, I'm kidding. Maybe they just don't want to learn what we're teaching them. Maybe we should start by asking them, what do you want to learn? Because, now, the problem was 20 or 30 years ago, you wouldn't have had the resources to answer that question. Oh my God, if they ask for this, what will I do? This is 2015. You will go out and you will curate the answer. You'll find the resources. It's changed. So they may not want to learn what we want to teach. So be a really good teacher. Ask them what they want to learn. In other words, I don't think, let's talk about parents. Okay, so my oldest is a parent of my son and daughter-in-law. My son and daughter-in-law are parents of two boys, all right, 8 and 3. So they haven't got a minute. I only they have 30 seconds. So if you try to fit them into what we're currently offering, they're probably going to say, it doesn't fit our lives. Now, in an earlier approach, we would have said, well, maybe I'll do this program 4 or 5 times. Then, of course, then you say to yourself, what am I, stupid? I'm just going to wear myself out. I haven't got the time. We can't get on the calendar. Our church books things 2 years in advance. I'm not going to have a room. So what if you flip that? One size doesn't fit all. You said, how do I personalize and customize it? I kind of know what you're struggling with. And if you don't, then go listen to them. Hang out at Starbucks one Sunday morning. Or what, fill in the blank, whatever that might be. What are they hungry for? What are their life issues and life tasks? What are they concerned about? Most parents want to be really good parents. And they get really no support at all from the society to be a good parent. I mean, like 0, maybe less than 0. Be a place where people can get to learn how to be a really good parent. You may not teach that favorite Catholic theology class that you love to teach. Put it away. Someday you might be able to. I'm much more concerned with starting with people and their life and then moving to faith than I am starting with faith and hoping that somehow I can get it to people. It's really hard. The climate has not been one that's endorsed that. These are pagans. How do we get them to be Catholics? So Catholic 101, 102, 103, 104. Yeah, I know. This is the opposite of that approach. Start what people are. What are they hungry for? What are they interested in? What are they struggling with? What are the issues in their lives? Everyone's trying to make sense out of their lives, especially in this fast-paced world. We should be an oasis that provides them with guidance and help. What parent do you know wouldn't love a night off? Bring your kids to church. We'll do the babysitting. Here's a night just for you. Great coffee, get refreshments, maybe a speaker, maybe a video. Just chill for a night. See, you've got to relax. You don't have to teach the whole catechism this week. Just breathe. Just breathe. People's issues are other than sometimes the church's issues. And by the way, you got cover. You have a new pope. Did I mention that like the last 2 years? This is exactly what he's saying. Start where people really are. You got cover. You may not have had cover in prior eras, but you got cover. Just take him at his word. He seems to be happy when people do. So I think people are hungry. But if they're not hungry for what we're giving them, stop giving them that and find out what they're hungry for. If people were not interested in religion, you wouldn't see the growth of new churches. So here's the key. Where these non-denominational churches come from? Because last month, they weren't there, and this month, they have 500 members meeting at a warehouse or whatever. Where did they come from? Why are people attracted to that? Because people have hungers. That subdued the group a bit. Yep. Yeah. Probably a little bit today, but I'll say this. It used to be a marketing thing. I need better flyers and all that. Stop. Everyone's connected. So who do you have on Sunday morning? Grandparents. Who do grandparents have? Grandkids. And kids. If you equip them to be social networkers, they'll get the word out to everybody you need to get out. In the old days, it used to be, look, if you told these 5 women, it will get across the whole parish. Yeah. But that was the phone and over the back fence and that kind of stuff, right? Everyone's part of a social network. So how do you work that? And the other thing is, people may not be looking for church, but they are looking for some of the things that church can do if it did it in a way that connected with their lives. Yeah. Church is a resource center as opposed to a programming center. The church as a community resource center that does faith formation. Everything is faith formation in that sense. You okay? How do you evaluate? The question is, how do you evaluate whether you're doing okay online? In fact, it's a lot easier than in person in a funny kind of way. So you can put evaluation forms and embed those into everything you do, number one. Number two, you can also monitor usage by using any one of the different, like Google has a free thing that tracks your usage, what pages they go to, how long they're there, what they had for lunch. They're just analytics. So you can build those things into it. But see, what I'm going to suggest is A lot of what we're going to do is going to be in this area here, where you have physical contact with people. It might be limited, so you have a way to be in relation with people. That's what we do really well. Relation with people, so we can get that feedback from people in person as well as online. We're going to provide online-only stuff, but it's not going to be it's not going to be the only things we do. So unlike a university which offers an online degree program, which has to embed all kinds of analytics and evaluation tools, performance indicators, we're going to actually see a lot of these people. Maybe not at church, maybe out in the community or in other settings. So we'll be able to get some feedback, first-hand feedback from people. So I'm thinking about us as being digitally enabled, as opposed to being 100% digital. So the digital is enabling faith formation to happen in some new and exciting ways, but not to supplant what we're doing, extend it, expand it, and re-envision it, perhaps. So I think you have lots of ways to be able to do that. And in fact, the switch will make us more attentive to, well, are they learning? Is this benefiting people? Than we probably are right now, where we assume if the body's in the chair, they're learning. And everybody in the room who's worked with teenagers for more than 30 seconds realizes the lights can be on, but there could be nobody home. But that's a good question, and it's one you got to keep at the forefront to know, how are people experiencing this? What are they learning from this? How are they taking this, making this part of their lives? That's important. Yeah, absolutely. A couple of examples, which is a great way to end the afternoon. In fact, you probably won't create, well, let me separate the two. You will create a digital platform. Will you create the content in it? Probably not so much. Why? Because what's exploded is the availability of digital content in all its forms, whether it's print, audio, video, whatever. You've got plenty of content. So content is not the problem. We've got tons of content, okay? What you'll have to create is a platform for that content. So here's a good friend of mine, Cindy Cole in Connecticut. First Church Simsbury is a UCC church. She came to a workshop I did 3 years ago. 2 months later, she had the first draft of her website up. I'll show it to you this afternoon. And what she's done is she's wrapped the digital around what she does with preschool families, elementary families. Like every month with the preschool families, she has a monthly web page. So here, if you're a preschool family, I want to go here. Every month she has something just for preschool families to do where? At home. That connects what they do during the preschool phase of their Sunday school. So let's see, what month are we? This month's theme was Love One Another. It's a great preschool thing. So she creates what I call a faith formation page. Every one of these is a link. I won't go to every link because it's slow to get there, but everyone. So here's coloring pages, here's online games, and she has curated these, which means what? She's gone out there, she's looked for stuff, she's screened it, she's chosen just what she needs for her people on that theme. Now what's going to pop up here is a YouTube video, which is the story of the Good Samaritan. Remember, the theme is love. And they can watch this video right here because YouTube will, in this platform, Weebly, it allows you to embed a YouTube video. Okay, so they're watching here. Here's matching cards that people can print. You see where I'm going with this? She does this every month around the theme of the month. Cindy sat at the workshop with me and she said, I could never do that. And then 2 months later, version 1 was they're finishing their 3rd year with this platform. You can do all kinds of stuff on here, okay? But she didn't write any of this. What she did was said, this is what we're doing at church. How do we provide parents with things this month they can do whenever they want, because this website looks good on their phone. You can play a YouTube video on their phone. You can play it on a tablet. So here's the key. Older children, heck, 3rd graders and up, and high school and adults, They know how to network with each other. So what you have to do is put some content in the pipeline. I don't want somebody to go to Google and put Bible study. It's 9 billion hits. And you know the first ones that come up, they may be popular, but they're pretty junky. And they're not going to be the Catholic Bible studies that you want on the topic that you want for the audience that you've selected. That's called curating. Okay? That's what we do. But if I put the right content in the pipeline, I then tap into their social networks. And what happens is they start sharing it. So with my grandparents who are on Facebook in record numbers, the fastest growing group on Facebook are 55 to 65-year-old women. Grandmas. That's why high school kids are getting off Facebook. I don't want my grandmother to see me. They're going over to Tumblr, which grandma can't spell. In the world of networking, by linking, they come to my site, and I become a resource. So everybody wants you to come to their site. So linking, and the YouTube video, no copyright problem. You notice that this page has a lot of content, but it's not on the page. It's curated. So I can go someplace and download a PDF, and what Cindy has put there, the cutout cards, you simply can print because she probably had the reproducible rights to that. Sometimes some of the things we do for like a Sunday, the take-home things on Sunday, you could make those digital, make them right on your site. But a lot of times what you see happening is a very well curated site with activities by easy to use categories that people can connect to. And people are really used to doing this. So this may be like, oh my God, I never did, but this is what people do all the time. All the time. I don't want them on Google. I want them here on my page. I don't want them on Google. I want them on my church web page. I want to be their resource center. Because I can connect it to what? Congregational events, family events, age group programming. I can make this work for my ecosystem. And it can be just as simple as this. Now, we'll talk about lots of ways to think about this, but you know how important intergenerationality is. You know how important family faith formation is. What we don't have are the tools to get there. How do you connect church and home? What's the bridge? I'm going to suggest it's digital. And by the way, digital means it's people. People say, oh, it's cold digital. No, it's people. People created this. People are going to interact with this. People are going to post a Facebook post. People are going to say, have you seen this? It's not technology. It's people. It's digitally enabled. So just keep that in the forefront. And even if you don't know how to do this stuff, there's people back home who do. You have a parish. Third graders know how to do this stuff. If third graders ever got organized, they could take over the world. We're just really grateful they're not organized. And they can't drive yet. Thank God. But I watch my second grader, my grandson, and he's doing things in second grade that were unimaginable 20, 30, or 40 years ago. Gee, you wouldn't have even imagined doing that. I watched a 3-year-old who's got his own PBS channels. PBS Kids, they got different channels. And he knows which ones to go to for the math program and the reading program. And so I'm watching him on his mom's iPhone. He can't call out on it. It's just got the Wi-Fi, so it's like a device, a little mini tablet. And I'm watching him, and it's a story that's teaching, reading. He's 3 years old, though. But he's reading with the story. I'm going, he's 3 years old. God, wait till that poor kindergarten teacher gets him in 2 years. But it's digitally enabled. It does not replace the alphabet letters, puzzle pieces on the floor. It didn't stop him from going on the back porch at Grandpa's house with his chalk and doing ABC all around and 1, 2, 1, 2. And I'm listening to him, A, B, and he's writing. And then he's making some words. Gets his name, 3 years old. He's got his will. I'm going. It's digitally enabled, but he's still got to learn it and do it. And he loves chalk as much as he likes his mom's iPhone. That's what we have to appreciate. It's a both-and world. And the younger ones look at us and go, don't you guys get it? It's all of this. That's for me what's really exciting about it. What are you thinking? I'll put the link to Cindy's website on the Lifelong Faith page for Albany, so you can just link right from there. So you have to remember it. So let me share with you. I'm the pastor at Holy Trinity Holy Trinity Church. No, it's a make-believe church, but not the one I'm pastor of. So this is an online-only church. All right. I wanted to build I built 2 examples, Holy Trinity Adults and Holy Trinity Families, to give you a sense of what this could look like in practice. And I put the links to that so you can actually see in the rest. All right, so here's my Holy Trinity Adult Faith Family. It's built, Weebly.com is a very simple website builder. It's drag and drop. If you could use Microsoft Word, you could pretty much use Weebly. I mean, really, it's meant to be that easy, so you don't need programming language. That's why I use it. So across the top are my big menus. So here's the big mindset shift. The learner is in control of his or her learning, not us. I'll try it again. The person is the center of faith formation, not us. We've tried to use external motivation to get people to learn. How's that working for you? So every year, the number of policies and requirements keeps going up. So I'm with the church 2 years ago, and I'm doing this little piece on motivation. They said, well, at our church, we really think we've solved it. I said, well, this was First Communion, right? This is really low. If you're going to coerce anybody, First Communion is a coercion point, right? I said, we were sick and tired of parents not coming to Mass. And so we decided that they'd have to, during second grade, they had to sign in every Sunday. Sign in. I had memories of, growing up. Sign in. And if they don't get to, they had a percentage. I'll say 80% of the masses during the year, their child can't receive First Communion. Now, of course, it violates everything about canon law. And if these parents had that, run a little canon law, they'd realize and they can go in at 10 o'clock on Saturday morning in May and get First Communion. But besides that, nobody knows canon law anyway, so they were lucky. And I thought, if you've got to go to that extreme to motivate people, there's something really wrong. Motivation works the opposite way. You want to read a great book on motivation, read Daniel Pink's book, Drive. Drive. So it's easy to remember. Daniel Pink. He summarizes all this great research, and he talks about a motivation in 3 ways. He talks about motivation as it's intrinsic. So what motivates people is the quest for personal autonomy, the quest to make a difference in life and make a contribution, and to get good at something, competence. I'm thinking, and it's all internal stuff. If external motivation really worked, then every NBA player would be LeBron James. They get paid enough. Some of these people get paid like $15 million, and they're terrible. I mean, they're worse than terrible. Look at the New York Knicks. The key about motivation is you have to play to people's internal motivation. And so that's exactly what we're doing here. We're saying find what fits where you are. We want to serve you. We want to be your resource center. We don't want to be your programmer. Does that make sense? That shift is important because then you offer variety. And in the variety we offer in all kinds of different forms, we can connect with people and build relationships with people. So they may start all the way over under that life issues section because that's what's really preoccupying them because they are a caregiver for their mom or their dad. But all of a sudden, that connects them across the platform to things going on at church, in the community, in families, and online. I don't care where we start, but if we haven't got a broad enough spectrum, enough variety, so I'll give you an example. Life issues. So this is something on my website. It was just, I needed some example that was like, what's something, these are adults. So a lot of baby boomers are parenting, caring for their parents. I put a little video up there that Jeff Foxworthy did. It's kind of a cute, it's from AARP. And it was on YouTube. And it was, are you a caregiver? And they go through this humorous thing about a whole set of criteria. Are you a caregiver? But it opens up the conversation. And so this is a church that has a caregiver support group. And then resources for caregivers. This book is from AARP. I don't even have it on my website. Just go to AARP. Because AARP has a whole section of their site being a caregiver with high quality resources done by professionals. I don't have time to write caregiver resources. You don't have time to do that. But I got all these experts with PhDs and MDs on the wrist and nurses. I have them all at my beck and call. That's part of my adjunct staff. So I can sit in Naugatuck all by myself, and I could have an adjunct staff at AARP if you think this way. So small churches say, well, we're a small church, we can't do this. And now you can. You could be a really small church and have a big adjunct staff. This might be some people's starting point for making contact with church, because you are the only caregiver support group in the whole community. And that might get them, yeah, that video is not going to pop up. That might, in April, you're doing a Catholic spirituality practice. That sounds kind of interesting, how to pray and that kind of thing. So I'll show you how this works after lunch. And yeah, the book looks interesting, so I might want to join this. You don't know where it's going to lead. I don't need to know where it's going to lead. But if I set the table with enough options, at home, on your own, at church, with the family, on the go, I got a better chance of connecting with you, and you connecting with great resources and great people. This is what my Catholic parish, Holy Rose in the East Side, what they did instinctively 40 and 50 years ago. They were the resource center for the whole neighborhood. Everything happened in and through there. You needed food, you stopped at the church. You needed a job, you stopped and talked to Monsignor. He made a couple of calls. You wanted to run a program, you used the community center at the church. It was the center of the community. In those days, it did it in the face-to-face, flesh and blood. We now can expand that into this wonderful digital world of all these connections, and knowing that people are already comfortable in that world. But the digital only works when it's connected to what? The intergenerational faith community, family, missional outreach, age group programming. It's not a standalone, not in the faith formation ecology. But if you connect them all, think what your parish could be like in the next 3 to 5 years. It took 40 years for the old ecosystem to decline. It's not going to take 40 years to rebuild it because time has accelerated. But over the next 3 to 5 years, what would happen if your parish moved along this track? And don't worry about what other parishes are doing, because no one's doing it anyway. You know, this is the great thing. When I was started in youth ministry, I'll end with the story. I started youth ministry in the Diocese of Bridgeport back in the 70s. And a church would call me in, they'd say, we haven't seen a teenager in 20 years. And I'd say, oh, it's great, because no matter what I do is better than what you did last year. So realize, for this whole transition, especially to digital, the bar is really low. And we're going to raise it. But the bar is really low. Just Google 10 Catholic Church websites and see how low the bar can get. Now, here's the nice thing. First year, I'm sure Cindy spent a lot of time. And then the second year, she reused some of that content and added new content. So she started building her library. Secondly, You don't curate alone. Look around. So if I find 8 great Bible videos for children, I now have a way to share it with everybody. So everybody curates for everybody else. It's really hard to do that. Remember, we always talk about how do we collaborate programmatically and the rest. We say, oh, there's so many roadblocks and logistics and distance and calendars. Now you can collaborate because there's no roadblocks at all. What if we had a space, which we could easily create, where people could say, here's the best of what I found on this topic. And everybody benefits. And then you go there and say, I wonder what my friends across the diocese have found. We used to do it by phone. Now you can do it visually online. So you don't curate alone. You design yourself, but you're not going to design by yourself because you're going to get some 20-somethings and high school kids around you and say, I wanted to do this. And then they go, and it happens. I want to do this, and it happens. And I want to record tonight's presentation, and it happens. Or I get the middle school kids to come to Vacation Bible School because what do you do with middle school kids in the summertime? They're everywhere and nowhere. I want them to be my film crew. So I want them to do some projects with the younger kids, filming stuff and creating some, and then I want them to do a 5 to 8 minute summary of today at VBS, which we put on our website so that parents and grandparents can see what the kids were doing. At the end of the week, I want them to do a greatest hits of the 5 days. By the way, all I can do is tell them what I want to do and then get out of their way because they have the technologies and tools right on their phone to create videos. They do it at school all the time. Okay. And then Sunday at worship, after communion, the middle school kids present this week at VBS to the whole community. You will have those kids for a lifetime. You have a parish. So if you're thinking about doing things alone, remember the very last scene from the movie The American President with Michael Douglas and Annette Bening? Let me remember the movie The American President. All right. Very last scene of the movie. Throughout the movie, Michael Douglas has been trying to give Annette Bening flowers and failed. He goes into a flower shop. The guy doesn't believe he's president. Then he opens his wallet. He has no money because he's the president, no credit card. The guy says, look, no money, no credit cards. He tries several times, fails. He tries to have him delivered, but Secret Service won't let him do it. To the very end of the movie, they're coming down the stairs of the White House, and he presents her with these gorgeous red roses. And she just starts laughing at him. She says to him, how did the most powerful man in the free world figure out how to give me flowers? And he very sheepishly says, I discovered that I had a garden, a rose garden. You have a parish. All these skill sets are in your parish, but we've never needed to ask them until today. Now ask. Some of the best teachers in your church are middle school kids and high school kids. They're natives to this world. I am just visiting.